The Green Bay Packers 2024 schedule is here. We're going to talk about it. We're going to break it down. We're going to do all that fun stuff live on YouTube. Let's go.
You are Locked On Packers, your daily Green Bay Packers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are Locked On Packers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm Peter Bukowski, and I cover the Packers for The Leap, a newsletter I would love for you to subscribe to. Follow me on Twitter, Peter_Bukowski. Follow the podcast on Twitter, Locked On Packers. Like us on Facebook. Subscribe to the podcast to iTunes, Spotify, Google Podcasts, wherever you find podcasts, you will find Locked On Packers, the #1 Packers podcast on the internet. And the show for fans who know what happened, they want to know why and how. Thanks to everyone who makes Locked On Packers their first listen every day. We hope you like starting your day with us as much as we like starting our day with you. Today's episode brought to you by our friends at Game Time Last Minute Tickets. The lowest price guarantee. Use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first ticket purchase. The schedule, it is here, and it is weird, but not as weird as it could have been, not as weird as it has been. The most important part of the schedule before we dig into it is rest advantage. And are they playing on a short week out against a team that's got full rest? Or are they, playing, how many games are they playing against teams coming off buys? Those are things that when we have that information, probably tomorrow, we will go over a lot of that. But they do have some Thursday night games. It just so happens that one of them is after another Thursday night game. So it's a weird quirk in the schedule. That also happens to be a stretch of multiple primetime games in a row. That part is a little weird here too. But when you look at the schedule overall, this graphic is from the Green Bay Packers. We knew about Brazil to start the season. The Philadelphia Eagles. You don't have to go to Philly. After that, you have two AFC South opponents, the Colts and the Titans. The Packers will be favored in each of those games. I would expect they will likely also be favored in probably half their road games. They'll certainly be favored in Tennessee. I think they'll be favored in Chicago, depending on what happens. I think they'll be favored in Minnesota, depending on what happens. And depending on how good JJ McCarthy looks, I think there's a chance they're favored in Jacksonville in week 8. We'll get to that. This early season stretch, it's kind of weird because you're playing after you get back from Brazil, two AFC, so two uncommon opponents. And that makes this a little weird to try and figure out. Then you're playing the Vikings, then two AFC West opponents. So those are uncommon opponents. Then you're playing two more AFC South opponents, and you've got the whole AFC South out of the way by week 8. And you played one divisional game. This is very backloaded on divisional games. You get week 9 with the Lions, the bye week. Then you've got the Bears in Chicago. You're home. This is the big one. This is where the big stretch starts. You're home for San Francisco, afternoon game, November 24th. And that is hopefully cold. That's when you want it, the elements to start coming in. That's a game you got to have. That's a game you absolutely have to have because that could have real implications in the NFC playoff race. Then you're on a short week. And this is why that 49ers game becomes so crucial because then you've got the short week. You've got Miami on a short week. Now it's going to be late November. It's the late game. It's the 7:20 Lambeau time start. It's going to be 8:20 body clock for Miami, and it is going to feel like minus 100 for Miami because it is probably going to be, in the 20s at best at night for this game? Under the lights at Lambeau, who knows what the situation is going to be health-wise with Tua Tagovailoa? Who knows what the health situation is going to be like with Tyreek Hill? How is the speed going to play on cold, potentially frozen ground at Lambeau? And then you got to turn around and play the Lions on a Thursday. You got to go to Detroit, and they'll have just played on Thanksgiving, so they'll have the same amount of rest that you would. So this isn't like they get the mini bye. They don't, number one. because they got to play the following Thursday, and they don't get the advantage of going Thursday to the following Sunday with a mini bye because they don't play on Sunday. So you're losing that part of it. Now, you do get that the following week against the Seahawks when you have to go to Seattle, and that might have real benefits here because that travel is tough. It is the only time in the season that they are traveling 2 weeks in a row. The only time. It doesn't happen until week 14 that they're traveling 2 weeks in a row. That is really good for them. And then they're back home Christmas Eve, Monday night against the New Orleans Saints. Dome team, Derek Carr outside. It's going to be cold. These are games you got to win. You finish out with Minnesota in Minnesota and at home for the Chicago Bears. When I went through and tried to figure out how many games they would be underdogs in, as we sit here today, I think they will be underdogs in Brazil, whether that's fair or not. I believe the last time I tried to find a line, they were. They will definitely be underdogs in Detroit. And, the Rams were a playoff team. Week 5, I think they will be underdogs in that game. Depending on, unless Caleb Williams is just like awesome right away. I think they will be the favorites in every other game they play. I think they'll be favored in every home game they play, including that 49ers game. Because by the time we get to that 49ers game, there's a chance that this is like a 1 or a 2 loss team. And so it will seem more even then than maybe it does right now. And who knows what happens between now and then. We can't account for all of these variables, but it does seem like at a certain point, the constantly being close but never getting over the hump is going to affect the 49ers in some way or another. There's 2 receivers that have been floated in trade talks. Brandon Ayuk does not seem super happy, and you can't imagine Deebo Samuel is super happy about being floated in trade talks. So what does that look like? That stretch, though, San Francisco, Detroit, Miami. If you can go 2-1 in that stretch, this is a schedule where you could be a 12-win team, a 13-win team. That's not out of the realm of possibility by any means. And so when you're trying to set up what this schedule could look like, and by the way, when we went through this last year, I said I thought they were a 10-7 team. A couple things break wrong for you injury-wise. They could be an 8 or 9-win team, 7-win team. A couple things break right for you. They could be an 11 or 12-win team. And that's almost exactly how it played out. If they get a little bit healthier, if they get a little bit better luck with the injuries, they're probably a 10 or 11-win team last year. That's what they were by quality, a 9.5, 10-win team, even with the injuries. If Aaron Jones stays a little bit healthier, if Luke Musgrave stays a little bit healthier, if Christian Watson stays a little bit healthier, I think that changes everything. We will get to predictions at the end of the show, but there isn't a stretch where you go, oh yeah, that's just brutal, because it's 49ers at home. And then, yes, you have the short week, but it's Miami who's got to travel. It's a long way to travel from Miami to Green Bay. Plus, it's Thanksgiving. It's a holiday week. You're at home for the day. Now, are you with your families? No, but you're at home. You got to sleep in your bed. I think there's some advantage there. And then what would normally be a short week, playing the Lions on a short week, even though they get the full week too, you also get the full week. So you're playing that on equal footing. Again, if you go 2-1 in that stretch, the rest of this schedule is such that this could be a team that, if they win the 49ers game, we're talking about a team competing for a first-round bye. That is the caliber of team that the Packers can be. Now, whether or not they will, we'll see. But that is the caliber of team this Packers team can be. I want to talk about this strength of schedule issue. I want to go through it a little bit. And we'll do that in just a second here on Locked On Packers. Today's episode brought to you by our friends at Game Time. You're going to want some of these tickets. You're going to want that 49ers ticket. That's going to be a hot commodity. You're going to want that. You're going to want to see CJ Stroud, Week 7, October 20th. Let's go. You're going to want to be a part of that. The home opener, Anthony Richardson. Let's do this. Game Time can get you there. They are an NFL ticket marketplace. Take the guesswork out of buying NFL tickets. Plus, they have flash deals and zone deals. Save even more when you choose a section and let Game Time choose the seats for even bigger savings. Plus, you can toggle in all-in prices, so that shows you the total up front. No surprise fees at checkout, and with views from your seat, you know exactly what you're getting when you're checking out. Take all the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, the lowest price guaranteed. I want to talk about strength of schedule. But are you sick of watching Fox Sports or ESPN on your TV all day? Have to turn down the volume with all that shouting? Make the switch to Locked On Sports today, a free 24/7 sports streaming channel programmed for you every day to bring you the biggest stories without all the screaming. Locked On Sports today brings you can't-miss analysis, opinions, and news streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. This question of strength of schedule, the way of doing it where you're looking just at what happened last year is not it. Like the Philadelphia Eagles go 11-6 last year. They were not an 11-6 quality team. They won a ton of close games. We said this all year. That was one of the teams I wanted to see the Packers play. By quality, that is not what they were. So we know that going in. Plus all of the upheaval in the offseason, coaching changes. Nick Sirianni seems to be coaching for his job. What's the outlook there? I don't know. We'll see. It is a bizarre situation right now in Minnesota where you have a team that seems ready to win, but they're going to be playing a rookie quarterback. They won 7 games last year. Kirk Cousins played half the year. They got pretty good play out of guys like Josh Dobbs and Nick Mullins, but they won some games they probably had no business winning. And Lions fans are going to get mad about this, but they were a 10.5 win team. And they won 12. They were not that good of a team. And so when you look at strength of schedule, it's actually better to look at the ways that we are predicting what these teams are going to be. And so Warren Sharp did this, and it was a great analysis, I thought, where he went through and he went and looked at win totals. Okay, who does Vegas think? Where do they think the odds makers, our friends at FanDuel, for example, where do they think these teams are going to land? Where do the markets think these teams are going to land? And he calculated it based on the juice. What are you paying to get Packers over 9.5? That's the number at FanDuel. I own that ticket. They are going over 9.5. Now I had to pay some juice on that. I think it's minus 134. So the markets think the Packers are going over. And so he put everything together, and based on win projections, win totals, the Packers, if you just use strength of schedule from last year, the Packers were like top 5 hardest schedules in the league. But if you look at win total projections and the juice associated with those win total projections, the Packers have something like the 19th hardest strength of schedule. We don't think the Vikings are going to be a 7-win team. We don't think the Bears are going to be a 7-win team with a rookie quarterback. Those are 2 rookie quarterbacks. And so are the 49ers. Generally before the season, the 49ers is not, we're not projecting, all of these 12-win teams. Are they going to get as lucky in every way possible? So I don't worry about some of that stuff. Now, the other thing is when you look at the actual schedule, and we just talked about this, there aren't these, the guys over, our friends over at the Solid Verbal call it the body blow theory, where it's like, okay, you play the 49ers and then the next week you got to do this. And it is certainly a contrast of styles. You got to play this physical, powerful, and fast 49ers team. And then you got to turn around on a short week to play the speed of the Dolphins. Well, we saw last year what happens when that team gets cold, when that team loses its footing. In Kansas City, they got thumped. Well, the Packers defense, we'll see if it can be Kansas City quality from last year. But other than that 3-game stretch, and you can throw Seattle in there, I think they're going to be a solid team this year. That's really the only stretch where you go, yeah, it's going to be a tough stretch. I think getting Seattle later is a benefit to the Packers because early on, what is this team going to be with Mike Macdonald? How are they going to change offensively, defensively? What are those things going to look like? The Packers don't really have that many of those games early in the season where you're like, well, we don't know what this is going to be. You know, the Eagles made a defensive coordinator change. How much is it actually going to change the way that they play defense? We don't know. And when we get into predictions, I think this is the thing that makes that Eagles game really tough to predict. What is Anthony Richardson in year 2? Well, we only saw a handful of games last year. But some of the stuff we saw was pretty good. The home opener, what does that look like? There's some uncertainty there. The Titans totally remade their team. There's some uncertainty there. You've got the Vikings early on. Now, I think that's a boon because you're going to get a rookie quarterback in start 4. He's 20 years old or whatever he's going to be. That's a really good time to catch the Vikings early in the season. Caleb Williams by week 11 with the Bears, like they might have figured it out by then. Like you'd want the Bears and the Vikings as early as possible. Getting them late, I think it sets up good for TV, especially if the Bears are better than we think. But there's not a lot of surprises on the schedule. And so if you're trying to look for these little hidden pockets, I don't think the Packers are going to find themselves at a lot of disadvantages. There's going to be a rest disadvantage week 16 into week 17 because they play on Monday night. But otherwise, they're going to have a rest advantage heading into week 2 against the Colts for their home opener. That's the good news there. They don't play in primetime until the end of the season then. They don't play a primetime game as of now. These things could get flexed, right? But they don't play a primetime game until week 13. And then they play 4 straight, which is weird, but not the end of the world. And then they play the back-to-back Thursday games, which is also a little weird. But that negates the disadvantage that would create it from playing, a team on the road on a short week because you got the full week too. So as we stand here now with what we know about these teams for sure, I think the schedule is pretty manageable. Like last year, they had some stretches where you go, oh, man, that's going to be tough. But also, we didn't know some of this stuff. You don't know that the Chargers, by the time you play them, are going to be in disarray. You don't know that the Giants will have caught lightning in a bottle with Tommy Cutlets. Now, no way they should have lost that game. We also thought Bryce Young was going to be better than he was, and then he was bad most of the year, except when he played Joe Barry. So a lot of the projection is, at this stage, foolhardy. I get that. But it's also part of the fun. It really is. And so let's go through it. We'll talk about it. We'll get it all worked out. And we'll do that next on Locked On Packers. Today's episode brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. This is the fun time of year. It's winner take all in the NBA and NHL, and FanDuel's giving you a shot to bring home a big win of your own. There's lots of fun times a year in the sporting calendar for sure. But it's warm now, so that's also a good time of year. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 to bet on spreads, money lines, player props, and more. So here's what I suggest. Go out, make that $5 bet on something that is like something close to a lock, like bet the Celtics, and take the bonus bets and then go bet the over. Because you want to get that immediate hit, right? That good dopamine hit. Give me that. And then go use that money to bet on the Packers over. That's a longer term play. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and make every playoff shot count. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. All right, let's make some predictions here. But first, Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. And now it's also available on Amazon Fire TV and the free Fire TV channels app. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Find Locked On Sports Today now available on the free Fire TV channels app. All right, remember the Packers win total right now. Our friends at FanDuel have it at 9.5. I would also say keep an eye on the line movement because it is 10.5 two other places I looked. It's 10.5 two other places I looked. That means 9.5 is a juicy number, which, by the way, that means go to FanDuel and go bet it, as I have, even with the juice that you have to pay. That extra half win is tasty. It's tasty. So let's go through it. The Eagles in week 1. I understand that this is really going to be a Packers home game. That's what my friends from Brazil tell me. People like Wendell Ferreira. There's a ton of cheeseheads in Brazil. But we also know week 1 is weird. This is a young team that's going to have expectations. And I think the Philadelphia Eagles are going to come back pissed off about what happened last year. A lot of guys with a lot to prove. And I'm gonna chalk that up. I'm gonna chalk that up as an L. I'm sorry, but that's what I'm gonna do. I think the next 2 are pretty straightforward to me. Those are wins for the Packers. You come home, you've got the home opener, you get right against the Colts, and then you go in. I think there's some things to like about Will Levis, but not enough. Not enough. And I know that they loaded up. There's a lot of new players in there. I think that's part of the reason why I want to fade them early. I think by the end of the season, they could sneak into the playoffs. But going into Tennessee, September 22nd, it's a noon game. Is there going to be a lot of like juice for Tennessee in that game? The Packers are going to be want to lay the smackdown on one of these teams. This is a sneaky one though, because I think that there is an explosive element of this offense that we could see. Will Levis is not afraid to go down swinging. And that just makes them dangerous. I'm going to pick the Packers, but I'm just saying that makes them dangerous. Home for the Vikings, got to win it. Got to win it. Rookie quarterback, JJ McCarthy. So to me, that's a win. In LA, I don't know how they did it with that defense last year. You lose Raheem Morris. I understand that that's part of it, but I think this offense is going to be really, really good. And at this point in the regular season, I expect Matthew Stafford to be healthy. This is one of those games like the Rams and Ravens played some like 38-35 game or something last year. I think this has a similar vibe. I'm going to give this one to the Rams. Though I think the Packers can win any game on their schedule. They can win every game on their schedule. I don't think they're going to win all of them. So this is the most intuitive place to chalk up an L. Home for the Cardinals. The Cardinals are an interesting one. They're a talented team. Kyler Murray back, healthy. Sorry, not a talented team. They are not a talented team. But they played hard last year. They're a tough-minded team, more than you would think from a team that was pretty cheeks last year. But the Packers are just better. Now, week 7, I think this is one of the hardest ones to handicap. The Packers being home, if this were in Houston, this would be harder for me. But I just don't see the defensive talent on that side of the ball. I think Houston's offense can be really, really good. This is going to be the first, maybe the second true test for this new Packers defense, because week 1, I can't expect it to coalesce in week 1. Like Jeff Hafley is not going to, that's another reason why I'm going to pick Philly, because I can't expect the defense to have coalesced by now. And week 7, we're almost to Halloween, October 20th. What are you really? So if you take the L against LA, you're 4-2 against the Texans. This is when I want to see it. This is when I want to see it. I'm going to take the win here in Jacksonville. That team is a mess, man. How can I trust the Jaguars? I think this is going to be a little stretch for Jordan Love. Like, I got Stafford, I got Kyler, I got Stroud, I got Lawrence, I got Goff. This is my chance to show it out. I think they go on a little bit of a win streak here. Now, the Jaguars, that can be a high variance team. I just don't know how they're going to score enough points. How are they going to score enough points, and how are they going to slow this offense down enough? I like the Packers in week 8. I like the Packers in week 9 against the Lions. They'll be fine against their bye week. In Chicago. This is going to be a tough game. It's going to be a tough game. This Bears offense is potentially explosive. And they're going to have had this one circled all season. And so this is the game coming off the bye where you cannot be looking ahead to San Francisco. You cannot be taking the Bears lightly. This is a dangerous game for the Packers. But I think they will be favored, especially if they're coming in with just 2 losses. And so I'm going to take the Packers here in Chicago. The 49er game. This is one of those where it's going to be huge for playoff seeding. If you're Matt LaFleur, I want to see every trick play that you have in the book. And I still don't know. Until I see it, I still don't know. Now, Green Bay in San Francisco in the postseason last year, I think this young team is going to be hungry to prove that they can win, that they can beat this version of the 49ers. And the younger players don't have the same scars that Kenny Clark does, that Jair Alexander does against the 49ers in the postseason. They don't. They were just in a game where they felt like they were every bit as good as the 49ers. It is so hard for me to pick the Packers here. It is so hard for me to pick the Packers here. So I won't. I'm going to pick the 49ers. You guys are going to be mad, and I understand that. Short week, the Dolphins, Thanksgiving. This was the time of year last year where they just started to get it in gear. So I think they beat the Dolphins. They go into Detroit. They lose the week 9 game. They got to get this one. And so I'm going to give this one to Detroit. That's 1, 2, 3, 4 losses. I think that's about the right number based on the schedule. They're going to lose one more of these. I think they're an 11 or a 12 win team. It's really hard to win 13 games. It is. I can't in good conscience, as someone who believes in the data, I can't predict that. But I also don't think they're going to lose back-to-back weeks. But this back-to-back road late in the season, you do have the mini bye going into Seattle. This is tough because what I want to do is land on 12-5. That's what I think they're going to be. So the games that I would predict them to lose. Okay. Eagles, Rams, Lions, 49ers, and then one more, probably a dumb one. So it could be, I told you, I think that week 11 game is scary. That week 8 game in Jacksonville is a little scary. And then 7 and 9, the Texans and the Lions, those are not going to be easy games. Those are certainly games that you could lose. So I think 12-5 is where this team lands. I think they have the upside to get to 13. And if things don't go right, 10-7. Like, that makes sense. Vegas right now thinks they're a 10.5 win kind of team. That makes sense to me. I think 11 or 12 is where this team ultimately lands. And that feels good. With this schedule is workable. They can win 13. We've seen them. Matt LaFleur, he can get more out of less with this team. So 12-5 is my official prediction at this moment. I don't think the schedule hurts them in any way toward that end. And it's something that we will continue to talk about when we get the full write-up. I'm sure Sharp Football is running the numbers right now on Rest Advantage. We will talk about that later in the week. So much more coming on Locked On Packers. Follow me on Twitter, Peter_Bukowski. Thanks to everyone who's hanging out with us live. You guys are awesome. Twitter, Peter_Bukowski. I got the playoff chain out for those of you watching on YouTube. Some of you complained I didn't have it out that the round one. I didn't like the Jordan Morgan pick because I didn't have the playoff chain out. It's a playoff chain for a reason, guys. And follow us wherever you can on the social medias. Instagram, Locked On Packers, TikTok, Locked On Packers, of course, YouTube right now, Locked On Packers. And wherever you find us, there we are. So you can stay Locked On Packers.